Chiefs win the Super Bowl.
Chiefs win. Cry, Eagles, cry.
Great, excited to be back in the league.
You know, every day I got the Three Stooges in the studio with me is a good fucking day.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
So let's make sure he gets that bag.
F-R-A-U-D-S, fries! Woo!
Justin's way ahead in picks. That's all that you need to fucking know.
Show's over.
Show's over. We're going home. I would like to welcome you back to another page of the Playbook Sports Podcast. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day, another off-season grade. Yesterday, we talked about the New York Jets. Today, let's talk about the Super Bowl runner-up Philadelphia Eagles. What a season that they had, honestly. They did several things. They answered the questions about their quarterback. Going into the season, there's no doubt that there were questions surrounding whether or not Jalen Hurts could be the future there. Those questions were all laid to rest throughout the regular season, and then his performance in the Super Bowl, he answered every single question and rightfully got his money. They did that. They put out a fantastic Christmas song. Go listen to it, watch it, whatever you got to do. It's awesome. Jordan Mailata is an incredibly talented singer, and he's a massive human being. Watching him sing in a high pitch is hilarious because he's so big. Love it. And then topped it off with a Super Bowl run. It was a dream season that unfortunately ended when they woke up and were forced back to reality and had to remember that Patrick Mahomes is still the father of the NFL and will be for some time. But at the end of the day, awesome year for the Eagles, who came into this offseason definitely being considered the class of the NFC, as these NFC contending teams are all making moves just to try to catch Philadelphia. So what have the Eagles done to keep themselves firmly entrenched in that number one spot? Let's talk about it. Key additions. They made a lot of low-key additions this offseason because they had to pay Jalen Hurts. So they gave him 5 years, $255 million, an absolute bag. He earned that. But that means that they really didn't have a ton of cash to spend in free agency. I love that they brought back Jason Kelce for a year. I'm glad he's deciding to come back for one last ride at least. Absolute stud center, big fan of his. And then they also brought back James Bradberry. I love that re-signing as well. They brought him in on a prove-it deal last year, and he balled out for them, was a stud for them. And re-signing him gives them a proven number one at their cornerback position. I love that. They brought in Terrell Edmunds at safety. Former first-round pick Terrell Edmunds came in for a one-year, $2 million deal. That is crazy cheap for someone who's, I think he's only 24, 25 years old, and he's going to start for them day one. Great pickup by them. And then they did a similar thing with Greedy Williams, picking him up, only 25 years old, and he's going to have a chance to work with some very, very good corners and be a part of a very, very good defense. Love that. Those were both low-risk, prove-it deals, and that was really the name of the offseason for Philly. They also brought in DeAndre Swift to be the new lead running back, and behind that offensive line in Philadelphia, I think DeAndre Swift can be awesome. And I like the addition even more when you look at what they gave up to get him. A fourth-round pick in 2025, that's all it took, and a seventh-round pick swap, that's fantastic value. I mean, that fourth-round pick in 2 years from now, whatever. Like, let's be honest, that player that they would have drafted with that pick probably wouldn't have been an impact player like DeAndre Swift could be this year. Love that addition. Key losses. The only downside to making a Super Bowl is that the wagons start circling as you start losing pieces of your roster because, hey, that guy played for a Super Bowl contending team. You know, they get picked up. It's just what the vultures circle. They pick the meat right off the bone. First big loss for Philly, Javon Hargrave, who went to their direct NFC competitor in San Francisco. That is a tough pill to swallow, especially when you consider the production he had for them last year. He was a key part of that defense that was setting records all year. Ended the season with 60 total tackles and 11 sacks. That's a ton of production to have to replace at edge. They also lost Andre Dillard, who was their swing tackle that saw some decent playing time, and he's a key backup at both tackle positions. Lane Johnson's getting up there in age, and an injury, Andre Dillard was the guy to step right in. Then starting guard, Isaac Seumalo was allowed to walk after he played in all 17 games last year for the Eagles, so they're going to have to fill that position. And then TJ Edwards, one of their starting middle linebackers, left for the Bears. Great pickup by the Bears because he had 159 tackles last year. A ton of production that has to be replaced somehow. And then they lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson at safety, who left for Detroit. He will also be someone that's tough to replace. Ton of talent there. they really did lose a lot of talent because, like I said, everybody was just waiting for their free agents because, hey, Philadelphia was awesome, especially on the defensive side. Any of their defenders that left, well, it's because, that defense was amazing. So the pieces were just picked right off their defense. So that's tough. Philly's free agents were all the rage this offseason. So how did they fill these holes? Let's talk about their draft. The Eagles came into this draft with some serious firepower with 2 top 30 picks. With their first pick at 10, they actually used that pick and traded up with the Chicago Bears to pick number 9, giving up, I think, a future 4th. Moved up 1 spot and got the player that they wanted, Jalen Carter, defensive tackle from Georgia. What a fantastic pick this was. I understand that there may be some character concerns here, and maybe he was a little overweight for his pro day, but you just got to turn on the tape and watch this guy. He balled out for that Georgia defense. There's a reason why when the Bears had the number 1 overall pick, he was the guy that they would take if they couldn't trade out of the number 1 spot before these character concerns and red flags allegedly started popping up everywhere. Absolute monster up the middle, might be the most talented player in this entire draft class. When Fletcher Cox decides to retire, there we go. Just slot him right in, no worries. Right next to his former teammate, Jordan Davis, they took in the first round last year. Great pick up there. Absolutely love that. With their second first-round pick, they actually got a player that a lot of people thought they might have to take at 10 if they pulled the trigger here in Nolan Smith, edge rusher from, you guessed it, University of Georgia. Yes, hurt in 2022, so he didn't have the production this past year, but he was fantastic in the year 2021. He's a freak athlete. Honestly, reminds me a ton of a player who had a very good season for Philadelphia this past year in Hassan Reddick. That's the comp right there. If you were doing comps on players coming into the draft, it was Nolan Smith looks and feels a lot like Hassan Reddick, and Hassan Reddick just was fantastic for Philadelphia last year. So if Nolan Smith is even remotely like that, great pick here at 30. In the third round, they ended up getting Tyler Steen, offensive lineman out of Alabama. I love that. There's your Andre Dillard replacement right there. In 470 pass block attempts, he only allowed 2 sacks this past season, and he's not going to be expected to start. They still have Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. He's just going to be able to learn from these fantastic offensive linemen that they have and just get better, and eventually he will play. He just will. As a swing tackle, he'll get time next year. Whenever Lane Johnson decides to go, the Eagles have done so well over these past few years of drafting for the future. And just picking players where, okay, we don't need this position right now, but we will. Let's do it. Great pick of Tyler Steen there. And then in the third round, they got a fantastic safety in Sidney Brown out of Illinois. First team All Big Ten, actually led the Big Ten in interceptions this past year with 6. As a safety, that's crazy. An absolute ball hawk. Great pick for a defense that needed to replace a couple of safeties. So CJ he's gone. All right, well, we'll bring in a third-round pick who could be an absolute stud. Love that pickup. And then in the fourth round, they got cornerback Keely Ringo. Why don't you just go ahead and guess what college he's from? University of Georgia. Uber athletic, a little bit raw. That's why you bring back someone like James Bradbury, though, to help teach him the position. He's got all of the physical tools in the world, but he just is raw at the position. So teach him, coach him up, and if anybody's going to do that, if any defense can do that, it's the Philadelphia defense. He could have very easily gone in the second round. Some people had him mocked late first, and they got him in the fourth round. That's crazy value, you guys. Crazy value. They crushed their first 5 picks of this draft. I mean, there's no other way to say it other than the fact that all 5 of their first 5 picks were fantastic. They just keep plugging holes that aren't there yet, but they see that the holes are starting maybe to form just a little bit. It's like, let's plug that right now. They might have had the best draft in the entire offseason, the best draft of anybody. I'm not going to say that definitively, but it's top 5 without a question. It's an A-plus draft class for Howie Roseman and the Eagles. That's just fantastic work. I love their draft. This offseason overall, the rich got richer. Yeah, they lost some talented players, but they replaced all of them with younger, cheaper talent that are still going to be good. They kept almost all of their stars from last season's NFC Championship team, and then they just went out and had one of the best drafts of anybody else. I am struggling to find anything this offseason that Philadelphia did that I dislike, honestly. I think this might be a first of the series, but this offseason I give them and Howie Roseman an A+. I can't find fault in what they've done at all. I love it. They're so good at working with cap space. They're so good at plugging holes that they need to, and they are just going to be a real problem once again in the NFC. And this is a team that knows that they are right there for a Super Bowl win. They nearly beat the Chiefs last year, and they are just returning all of the top talent from last year's team. And they've done a good job at setting themselves up for the future as well. I think they're probably one more draft away from legally changing their name to the Philadelphia Bulldogs, but that's coming. They love drafting from that Georgia defense, and there's no better defense to love drafting from than Georgia. Consistently the best defense in college football. They just keep taking these guys, and the league just keeps letting it happen. What are we doing? Wake up, NFL. Come on. I think we will definitely be seeing this Philadelphia Eagles team make a deep run into the playoffs once again, sadly for Colin. Sorry, buddy. That's all I got for you guys on the Philadelphia Eagles offseason. We will be back tomorrow with day number 27 of 32 off seasons in 32 days.